arises down the agenda this morning? Hearing none, moving on to confirmation of council minutes.
Moved by Mr. Engel, seconded by Mr. Buckle, that the minutes of the January 7th, 2016 council session be adopted as circulated.
Are there any errors, omissions, or discussions from those minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor, opposed if any, that is carried. Thank you. Communications, Betty Ann.
Communications were included on the agenda, and there are no further communications.
Thank you. All right, next up we have a special presentation, and I'm going to defer to Kelly to give us a little bit of an update.
Through you, Mr. Warden, today is a very exciting day for us. We are completing the graduations for Cohort 1 and Cohort 2 for the Managing and Leading in Municipal Environment Certificate Program that Council supported staff in engaging with Loyalist College. Like all local governments everywhere, we have been challenged to meet pressures from various sources, and it is thrilling to recognize our first two cohorts, our first two graduating classes for the Loyalist College program. County Council have been very supportive in investing in our staff, and we need to grow our managers. We, like many other communities, have a solid need to attract and retain skilled people, and not understating it, the two cohorts in the audience they were skilled before, and we've just added to that skill and toolkit. It was a terrific program. It takes a little over a year to complete. It consists of 15 modules. The title of the certificate is Managing and Leading in a Municipal Environment. The positive results that we look for through the program is obviously leadership and lead and sustain change, establish strategies to analyze problems and come up with solutions, connect with people to build a stronger commitment and motivation, create positive relationships to achieve greater results, communicate more effectively, and for me, the most important, to inspire passion and boost performance. Management is a second element to the program, and that's the mechanics of how we work in the area of completing projects on time and within budget, effectively interviewing and selecting staff, and then ultimately making better bottom line decisions. The two cohorts, we had the opportunity to have a group photo shortly before council started today, and it was for me a bit of mixed emotion because I got to know members on my cohort much more intimately than I otherwise would have, and I'm sure all the participants feel the same way. So the relationships have also been enhanced as a result of the program. I'll now turn it over to Chuck O'Malley to make a couple of comments from Loyalist College, who is the corporate manager for Loyalist.
Everybody hear me okay? Just get the button there.
There we go. Your Honor, County Council, senior staff, and the general public. Give you a couple of things. Kelly did a great job, by the way, of explaining it, so that keeps my time short. But I'd also like to just reiterate in thanking the partnership here. And really, when we started this particular program back in 2004 with some local municipalities in the Quinte region, it was really about partnership. So when we approached the county here, we really got a sense that this would be a true partnership, and it has. So thank you for that. And when I come back here, I think it was almost a year and a half ago, I come back and you get a warm reception and a vibe when you go into any organization, and I thank you for that, because I did receive that today. From walking in to staying in the hotel in the community, you get a sense that you guys are working together. So, and that's really what this program is all about. It's about partnership. It is a 15-day certificate program that we've done since 2004 with over 27 and growing municipalities across Ontario. It's probably, I kind of lose count anymore, but well over 1,000 graduates now, probably over 1,500 enrolled. We have other modules that we do. We have a Bridges to Leadership program as well in the municipal field that's for those folks that are not necessarily in the supervisory management role. We're getting a lot of uptake with that. So you're very topical in your investment in your people here because according to Jim Pine and the chair of the council, there's probably about 10,000 municipal leaders retiring in the next 5 years. So your investment in your staff will pay dividends. So you're to be congratulated, not only the council for supporting it, but Kelly and your team for executing. I commented earlier, the way that they devised the cohort really facilitated a large number of graduates in just 2 cohorts that I've never seen before. So once again, congratulations for that.
So through you, Mr. Warden, if I could have yourself stand in front here, and then Chuck O'Malley beside, and I'll read out names, and if the cohorts could come up and beg to get your certificate out of the hands of the warden. And we'll start with cohort 1. Sorry, hopefully everybody can hear. So our first graduate is actually Darlene Batty. And next is Betty Ann Cobain. Oh, me, sorry. That was a little embarrassing. Jason Gerbert. Chris LaForest.
That's good. Good to hear.
You're very welcome. Christine McDonald.
Congratulations.
Marianne Nero. Thank you. Doug Smith. Bruce Stickney. Caravan Mile. Through you, Mr. Warden, the certificate says Charlie, but we all know it's Charles Young. And 2 regrets today. Steve Schaus, the Deputy Chief for Operations, is actually in Toronto today attending an emergency management planning session, and Ray Lux, the Deputy Chief Quality Assurance. So cohort 2, first up is Anne-Marie Collins. And Charlene Cornfield.
Long walk.
It is.
We should have some music playing. Congratulations, Shirley. Thank you.
Susan Wolf-Dales. Bill Dietrich.
Thank you.
Sherry Dillon. Jackie Grubb. Melissa Legacy. Carrie Meyer. Sandra Muser. Emily Patterson. Heather Penny. Susan Petrick. Congratulations. Matthew Stangen. Joanne Sutton. And our final that's graduating today has actually celebrated 2 milestones this week. And I'm very pleased to announce for County Council that Jack Van Dorp also passed his registered professional planner certificate, or degree, excuse me, and he's the real McCoy. So congratulations. And 3 of others for Cohort 2 who were unable to attend were Tony Bain, Nancy Cool, and David Smith. So you guys rock. Congratulations.
If any one of you are wondering why Brian Knox didn't get one, he struggled through the courses, so he was unable to achieve this level, so. Okay, next up, we have a delegation, Scott Berry and Alan Webster. Is Alan here today? Okay, so Scott is here on his own. Scott, the podium is yours. Okay.
Test, test. Is there a presentation? So good morning, Warden and Council. Thank you for the opportunity for me to come today and give you an update on some of our operations and work that we're doing. The first slide I'd like to speak to is really around our company's performance, Ontario Power Generation. We had a very good year last year. In fact, one of our best years ever in terms of safety performance. It's where we keep a really a laser light focus in terms of the health of our employees and the health of our operations. A big focus for us in our company at the moment is also really maximizing our assets. We own 65 hydroelectric stations across the province, a couple of nuclear stations, as you know, and some gas-powered, and we continue to invest in those assets on behalf of the ratepayers in Ontario. We're investing over 200 projects in our hydroelectric efforts to revitalize them across the province, and I hope you've also heard the recent announcement of the refurbishment of both Darlington and Pickering, and I'll speak a little more about that later in the presentation. I think it's important to note that all of the profits from OPG go back to the province to keep the costs low. We're the lowest cost generator in the province. We help moderate those prices to the ratepayers and continue to manage our resources to ensure rates stay as low as possible. And we're also proud as a generator in North America that we're the cleanest generator in terms of our portfolio now with nuclear. And the hard efforts we did as a company with the coal closures, it was hard on us as a company, it was hard on our employees, but we've done a lot of good effort in refocusing our efforts in very clean energy. In fact, we're 99.7% free of smog and greenhouse gases, and we're the cleanest generator in all of North America. Turning a little more locally, if you will, to our operations here in the county, our waste operations at the Bruce Power site. Also a very successful year in terms of our performance. We've worked over 1,800 days safely without a long-term accident with our employees. And our drivers have the critical role of safely transporting the nuclear materials from Darlington and Pickering to our station here in Western, and on occasion to Chalk River, have traveled over 3 million kilometers safely traveled without a preventable accident. That's the equivalent of about circumnavigating the world close to 90 times. So they take great pride in the work that they do. They understand that they are visible on this public highways, and their responsibility they exercise with great care and great passion. You also know that we do a lot of effort in minimizing the amount of waste that's generated, both at source at the station, as well as our operations here where we process the low-level waste through compaction and incinerator. The incinerator performance for last year was mixed. We're not overly pleased with its performance. We didn't meet some of our targets in terms of the volume of waste to incinerate, partly due to outages we've taken, and we're investing a lot of money in the incinerator to increase its reliability. In terms of its environmental performance, it's still stellar and well below all of the guidelines of the certificate of authorization we have to operate it. So some strong important performance on the environment front and our waste minimization efforts. Turning to Darlington for a moment, I think it's really welcome news for the nuclear industry in Ontario in this government's policy to continue to invest in the workhorses of nuclear that provide the baseload electricity for Ontario, over 50%. And we've got some good assets that all of us in this nuclear industry have worked hard to improve its performance. Darlington is one of the world's leading performers. So the economics make sense, the safety performance makes sense to invest the kind of money to refurbish these units to allow them to continue and extend their life, and in Darlington's case, another 30 to 35 years. Darlington's provides about 1 in 5 homes and businesses in the Ontario with electricity, and it's a smart investment. It's a big investment. It's an investment that will take 10 to 13 years. The first unit will come offline in October of this year, and it's an investment of around $12.8 billion. But it's also an investment in Ontario. About 90% of all the work that's done, the contractors we use, the manufacturers and the components are right here in Ontario. And the GDP contribution to the Darlington investment works out to about $14.5 billion, far in excess of the actual investment and the cost we do. So it's good for Ontario and it's good for the nuclear industry. I keep looking up at the screen here. You just have to envision these beautiful pictures I had of. So right now you're looking at a mock-up of a reactor we've built at Darlington. So very, a lot of the planning to go into a mega project like this takes a lot of investment. Investment in people, investment in procedures, and investment in tooling. In fact, we have 65 highly specialized robotic tools that we've created for the refurbishment of Darlington. And we've created a full-scale reactor mock-up, and we're training now. So we're testing our staff, we're testing our procedures, we're testing our tools to ensure that when the breaker opens in October of this year, we're ready to go and keep this project on time and on budget. And over the course of this, we're looking at around 8,800 jobs, both indirect and direct, as a result of the investment in Darlington. And we're going to save about 324 megatons of greenhouse gas over its operation. There's also welcome news around Pickering. You may have heard that Pickering was reaching its end of life and was tentatively scheduled for shutdown in 2020. The government's asked us to look at the ability for us to extend the life of that asset to maximize its life outwards to 2024. So it's good news for the Pickering community and good news for nuclear. And that'll be critically important because the continued operation of Pickering out to 2024 will help ensure there's good, reliable nuclear baseload electricity as Bruce Power initiates some of their major component work, and as we at Darlington begin to take some of those Darlington units on and bring them back on stream. And that's going to be a significant investment for the ratepayers of Ontario that'll return as well. So that's sort of the performance side in terms of our company and some of the work that we're doing. I'd just like to finish with two brief projects, one on the Deep Geologic Repository. As you know, this project continues to work its way through the federal reviews process. It's been over 4 years before this government. You'll recall there's 33 days of extensive public discussions and hearings that took fold with literally hundreds of interveners that came forth to present their views, to present their concerns, and it's been a very open and transparent process and one that I believe the community and both nationally and internationally has viewed as the right process. You'll recall in May that the JRP, after their extensive review of all the materials, put forth their recommendations to the Minister of Environment. There was a strong endorsement of the safety case and underlining the protection of Lake Huron and the protection of the residents here in this community. And that evidence strongly indicated that the responsible step forward for this generation should be taken now, and the location is the right location. So that's been with the minister. You'll recall we had a federal election in November, and I think that was a bit of a distraction. New staff hired, newly minted Minister of Environment with additional responsibilities in climate change as well, so a broadened portfolio. But the staff have now, since before Christmas, been turning their eyes to this. There's been numerous briefings to the minister from other agencies that were involved and from interested stakeholders, so that review is very much underway in the hands of the minister to render a decision. The federal government has indicated their decision should arrive around March 1st. Indications are there's a lot of activity on the Hill, and we believe that decision is on track to be made in a few short weeks. From there, then, it would turn back to the Joint Review Panel to give consideration to a license. This license would be for the site preparation and construction, but again, it's just one step in many steps of a very long process. There's many more steps to go. There's many commitments that we've made as a company. There's many conditions that the JRP has indicated as conditions to move forward. There's commitments in the community we've made, so a lot of work of many years before we would really sort of consider putting a shovel in the ground. So again, an important step, and one I think a lot of us in this community are in anticipating the decision in March. The last slide that I'd like to speak to is just our operations here at Western. So I spoke to the good performance we've had. Like our nuclear stations, we're regulated by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, and we have licenses to operate that have conditions and expectations on our performance and the improvements and the investments we'll make. That license comes due in 2017, and we currently have a 10-year license. So it's going to be coming up for renewal. And we've now sort of looked at our business planning assumptions. Given the the great deal of uncertainty with the deep geologic repository, and given the uncertainty with APM process and used fuel, it's important that we continue in our existing status quo of our operations at that facility for many years to come. So that's really what our license is looking at. So we have to not only demonstrate to the regulator that we've successfully operated, but that we can demonstrate and continue that we can continue on that vein over the duration of the license in the 10 years ahead. So we'll be embarking this year on a lot of community consultation and stakeholder engagement around what's in that license, what we envision in terms of increased storage needs to continue to support the nuclear stations that operate in the province to maintain the interim storage of the low intermediate level waste. And we're also looking at some enhanced efficiencies. We've done a lot of work in reducing the volume of waste that's there. We've successfully last year gone back into some of the waste that's stored. We've pulled out 80 bins and reduced them down to 14. We found that when we pull out some of the waste from a couple of decades, the conservative approach by employees was put everything in a bin. If it's like my home now, you've got 12 bins to better refine the segregation of materials at source. So we're finding a lot of materials that in fact weren't contaminated, and we've been able to redirect over 22,000 pounds of metal back into the metal market and sell it back into public domain. So a lot of efforts on our part to free up some space, but we also know that to continue our operations we need to expand some of the existing storage capabilities that we have, and that'll be part of the license. And we're also looking at not only enhanced abilities to sort the waste we have, but also a large object repurposing facility that will enable us to take large objects like steam generators and others and reduce them into smaller components and remove the uncontaminated material. So that's a bit of a snapshot of where we are, and welcome any questions from the Warden or Council. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Scott. Is there any questions or comments from Council? Ann?
So at our council, we passed a resolution, and I believe here in Kinloss was going to do the same to reiterate our support for the DGR. And I just wondered if at the county level we should do that as well. And I won't go into the details of why. Scott has explained things, and I think over the past decade we have heard all the scientific explanations, and due diligence has been explained to us many, many times. So I'm just putting that out for council. If anybody else wants to comment on that.
Thank you, Ann. Mike?
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Warden. I had a question, but and a comment, and I'll comment. If that motion's in order, I've certainly seconded that. I think I would say to Scott and OPG, been here since you started this process of some 10 years ago, and a learning experience from day one about first of all, the regulatory requirements and the public consultation and the extensive, studies that were done by OPG, and the opportunity for just about for anybody to intervene and speak to that issue about the DGR, which I thought, was not always given in projects in a broader sense. So I think this one probably got more scrutiny than many, and we had three very eminent Canadians sitting as the joint review panel, taking evidence from, again, anybody that was wanted to, and they've come up with a recommendation based on what I think is basically the facts of the case, and I would certainly support, if council is willing to say, support informing the minister that we continue to support this project.
Thank you, Mike. Other comments or questions? Just, Scott, I know I asked this question here in Kinloss Council on Monday, and yes, and we did support a motion to send off to the minister, federal minister, plus we also CC'd the premier on this, on the comment. So a question, Scott, and again, I asked this on Monday, are you getting any inkling or any hearing anything out there what the minister's intentions are?
No, and it wouldn't be appropriate for me to speculate on that. As I mentioned, the minister is working hard to to turn our eyes to the project and give it the appropriate continued rigorous review that it requires. It has been one of the most exhaustive federal review processes ever undertaken in Canada, particularly with nuclear waste, and we remain confident that staff and all the appropriate authorities are giving it the due diligence and the careful care and thought and consideration that's required of this decision. I think it's important that as the Minister reviews the science-based facts and the evidence that's before her, that her and her staff are also, I think, aware or interested to know the views of the community. This is certainly the community that has taken a lot of effort and time to thoroughly understand, to see for yourselves that both the environment and the residents will remain protected. Both this county and Kincardine and others undertook independent reviews to assure themselves of their own interests are being protected and being considered, and that there are in fact benefits to this, that there is no impact to the communities. So there's, we appreciate the work that the residents and the communities and the municipalities have undertaken themselves to learn for themselves, to understand and to educate themselves, to be assured that that you're part of the solution, to take responsibility for future generations now, that it's the right path forward, and I appreciate the time and the diligence that you've done to thoroughly understand that and assure yourselves and those of your constituents that it's safe to do so and it's on the right path. And I think it's important that the Minister and staff at this juncture understand that this is a community that understands nuclear, that's invested the time in thoroughly understanding to assure themselves of the safety, and that it is a community that's supportive of this. This is the community that has the potential biggest impact for this project, and there's others that have certainly echoed their views and concerns outside of this area, but this is the community that has the vested interest and may best be in a position to let the Minister know and staff that they're confident in the approach and the support that you've given is the right path.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Any other comments or questions? So Ann, I would take that as a notice of motion, and that is something we could bring back for a special meeting next week and have
That's
some more
fine.
dialogue. So,
And,
sorry.
I have wording for a motion that we worked on for our municipality, and you probably have one too, so I would be happy to bring that back next week, and it can serve as a notice of motion.
So you're moving that, we need a seconder? Mike, sorry? Oh, Kelly, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Warden, I can read into the public a draft motion, and if the mover and the seconder are supportive of it, it'll give staff direction for February 11th. That moved by Councillor Ann Eady and Councillor Mike Smith, that to receive as notice of motion to confirm support of the waste management facility at a special council meeting on February 11th, 2016, and staff will have the draft letter prepared for that meeting for review.
Should we call it the Deep Geological Repository
Okay.
rather than waste management? I think it is important because the deadline's coming up very quickly, and there's a lot of people sitting around this table that ran in municipal elections on this subject, making it very clear that we are very supportive of this, and Bruce County has never wavered for support of this project from day one, and I think it's very important that the public and the Minister and the province knows our feelings on this project. So we have a mover and seconder for that notice of motion. Are there any further discussions? Mike?
Thanks. I'll get to my question. Thanks very much, Mr. Warden. My question, Scott, is with Pickering, and it's just an interest. And I know the original shutdown dates were 2020 for those 6 units, and hopefully they'll get that life extension. But in any case, I'm interested in the time period between when the first unit goes down until the entire plant is shut down. Is it a number of years or months, or? Because I know there's 2,000 megawatts there that needs to be replaced somehow.
Right, in terms of the generation loss, So we've been asked to look at the science behind the ability to extend the life. For all nuclear facilities, as you're probably well aware, they have some life-limiting components, but all of us in the nuclear industry undertake aging management process. So we're continuously looking at equipment, testing, analyzing, studying it, to determine that there's a wide margin of safety before it, before the tires in the car get bald, if it were. So we have some work to do to assure ourselves of that, to the extension of the asset. Nonetheless, we still bound that by a very conservative margin of when we think they should come off. And as we run our nuclear reactors, it's like an odometer on a car. You keep track of that, and part of the aging decision is around the full-time equivalent hours. Some of those units, the odometer will reach that number sooner than others. So it's likely that 2 units would likely be brought down around 2022. And 4 more remaining units would be able to extend their life well into 2024. The government's policy is to continue to invest in nuclear. It's roughly 50% of the generation capacity in the province. They believe through conservation efforts, through the renewables that have come online, we'll have some Darlington units back online by 2024, that they believe that there's confidence in the installed capacity in this province to meet the demands well into the future. But Pickering now is playing a more critical role in helping bridge us over the start of those investments in refurbishment, because not all units will be refurbished prior to Pickering coming offline. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Any further questions, discussions? We do have a motion on the floor. I will call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Okay, next up, we have Brandon Cable from Youth Roots Impact Youth Summit. Welcome. The podium is yours.
Okay, good morning. Good morning, Mr. Warden and Council. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Brandon Cable, and I'm the coordinator for Youth Roots of Hanover and surrounding area. And I'm very pleased to tell you about the Impact Youth Summit, which is coming to Bruce and Grey counties this coming May. So Youth Roots has been around since 2005. We originally were developed out of a concern over methamphetamine use in the town of Hanover, and have since kind of spurred into a group that is led by community members, and our goal is to create, develop, and support a voice for youth in the town of Hanover and in surrounding areas. So predominantly we work with youth in Durham, Hanover, Walkerton, and Chesley. However, we're currently looking to expand our reach, and so we're going to be doing so through the Impact Youth Summit. The Impact Youth Summit is coming to the P&H Center and other breakout locations between Friday, May the 27th and Sunday, May the 29th. We'll be bringing 500 youth from across the province, with 200 youth coming from Grey and Bruce counties to the town of Hanover. We're particularly focusing on youth from underprivileged backgrounds and youth from rural communities. So that's our predominant focus, and we're trying to bring an event that would typically happen in a larger urban center to a rural community. So as I mentioned, 500 youth are going to be congregating for 3 days of interactive learning. The goal of the summit is to build leadership skills and leadership capacity in our youth, while also creating an awareness of mental health and well-being concerns that impact youth. This project kind of stems from work that was done by our youth advisory board called Impact Teens, who assessed the region looking at how we could better increase youth well-being in our area. And so the Impact Youth Summit aims to hit on a number of these 21 top priority items that the youth identified. So at the summit, youth will be taking part in sessions on social media etiquette, public speaking, fundraising, uncovering your full potential. And so these sessions are really designed to have takeaway skills that the youth will be able to use when they go back to their communities. We're really trying to push this as a flipping of the iceberg, so as opposed to adults and decision makers creating programs that aim to increase youth well-being, we want the youth to increase youth well-being across the province. At the summit, we have three kind of main presenters who will be speaking. So we have motivational speaker and author Ryan Porter, who's coming in from Toronto, and he'll be opening us on Friday evening talking about how youth can kind of choose a career path and how university does not have to be the predominant career path, that there possibly are other options such as entrepreneurship that maybe are valuable options for youth to be exploring. Team Canada inline goalie Kendra Fisher will be coming in from Kincardine, and she'll be talking about her experience with mental illness and how that affected her hockey career. And former Scotiabank Executive Vice President of Global Human Resources, Sue Graham Parker, is coming in to talk about her experience starting out in 1976 as a bank teller at a Scotiabank branch and how she climbed to her position before retiring in 2015. So the keynote presenter at our summit is going to be Craig Kielburger. Craig Kielburger started Free the Children in 1995 at the age of 12. We felt that he is a very motivational Canadian who a lot of youth can relate to. Craig's going to be coming in and talking about how one person can make a world of difference and kind of giving that push that each youth in attendance really can make a change in their community. And that's kind of our main focus. If you don't know Craig, he's received 15 honorary doctorate degrees, and he's been on shows such as CNN, The Oprah Winfrey Show, 60 Minutes, and he's been featured on numerous times on television. He runs We Days, and so he brings together over 100,000 youth each year, but the youth cannot pay to attend a We Day. They have to earn their ticket through community service. And so we're trying to kind of hit on that message with the youth who are attending our event, that over the next year between 2016 and 2017, the youth will be implementing projects, and ideally they would become eligible to attend a We Day event. We'll give you a very quick tentative agenda. So on Friday, May the 27th, we'll be starting at 7 p.m. As you'll see as we move on, the youth will be coming from quite a far ways, so we want to make sure that everyone can get there. Ryan Porter is opening us on that evening, and then we have a Youth Have Talent night. On Saturday, it's our busy day, so we're having breakfast. We have breakout sessions. There will be 9 that will be running. The youth will get to experience 3 each over the course of the weekend, and so the youth will be coming in groups, and so as a group, we'll make sure that the entire group is able to view all those sessions. The Canadian Mental Health Association of Grey Bruce is presenting their Let's Talk program in the afternoon. We have our WIG planning session, which I'll be talking more about in a minute, but it's their wildly important goal and their action planning session. We have the Amazing Race and a youth swim at the Hanover Regional Aquatic Center, followed by a gala dinner being catered by the Lions Club, and Craig Kielburger's keynote address. And finally, on Sunday, we have breakout sessions again. The Canadian Mental Health Association will be finishing their Let's Talk program. We have a Getting Active workshop looking at how youth can de-stress and re-energize and encourage their peers to get active in the community. I'm looking at the importance of physical exercise related to mental health. And then Kendra Fisher is finishing off our afternoon. So the question always comes out, where are we going to find 500 youth? Well, we're very thrilled that registration opened on Monday. Currently, we have 43 of the 500 youth registered, and for some reason, they have all come from Bruce County, 30 coming from Kincardine, and 13 coming from Mildmay at this point. So we are aiming for 200 youth to be coming from Grey and Bruce. So whether that's through youth groups that are already organized, such as Youth Waves, which is sending 30 youth from Kincardine, sports leagues, community-based action teams. And then we have expressed interest from other communities, including Peterborough, Sudbury, North Bay, Toronto, Orangeville, Mississauga, Prince Edward County, etc. So we definitely have our fingers on youth across the province right now, and so we're very optimistic that we'll hit the 500 mark. We really think that the Impact Youth Summit has something to bring to our community because as youth have experienced and growing up in Bruce County myself, I think that there's a great need for something like this to happen in our area. Rural youth are often perhaps an underserviced population compared to youth from larger metropolitan centers. And so we feel that bringing a capacity building workshop to our area not only will help build the leadership capacity of youth in Bruce and Grey counties, but will also help build future leadership potential and hopefully attract youth to want to stay in our area after they return from a post-secondary career path. The challenge is that we feel that isolation can lead to untreated depression, suicide, addiction, and trouble with the law, and we want to try and pair youth with the right supports and guidance so that they can make connections with adult allies and supports in the community, and hopefully have the power to make change in the community. So when we're looking at how the Impact Youth Summit is going to result in change, as I mentioned, we're having a WIG planning session, and so that's their wildly important goal. So each youth organization or each group of youth that attends will be developing a plan of action and pledging to implement a project designed to increase youth well-being in their home community within 1 year. And so when the youth return to their communities with their adult ally, they'll be implementing this project. We'll be tracking them with our Hanover Youth Roots Facebook page to join all the organizations together. And so the youth will be able to network with each other to try and overcome any obstacles that they face. And at the same time, Youth Roots will also be providing support and guidance. So we'll be going out and visiting the youth in their home communities between 2016 and 2017 to ensure the success of each project. And so we'll really be kind of the liaison between the groups and the adult allies to make sure that their projects are successful. So what are we hoping to learn? This is always an interesting slide when we go out to school presentations because a lot of the students are a little confused on what we mean. This isn't what we want the students to learn, this is what we'd like the adults in the community to learn. So we want the adult leaders to recognize that youth have the ability to make an impact when they're motivated, empowered, and provided with the tools and supports to create change. We want negative stereotypes of youth to be overcome and to show that youth are motivated and can lead future change in their communities. And we want the collective power of these 500 youth to demonstrate that youth can make a difference and that they should be consulted in decision-making processes and in policy development in their home communities. Unfortunately, Ashton was not able to come this morning, but this idea actually came from a grade 12 student who was on co-op with Youth Roots this past fall. Ashton is a community leader from Ayton who attends John Diefenbaker Senior School. And so Ashton's kind of big idea on his first day of co-op was to bring this youth summit to Hanover. And so over the past 4 months, we've been working to put this on the ground. The only kind of stipulation that he had was that if we were going to do this, it had to be at the same caliber as larger metropolitan centers and the summits that they produce. So it's definitely been a challenge, but one that we have been very eager and very willing to work on. So Ashton has said that youth deserve to be made a priority in their community. The summit will give youth the opportunity to show that they can make a difference and help to change the negative stereotypes often associated with youth. The Impact Youth Summit will help increase youth well-being across Ontario, ensuring that youth feel wanted, are given opportunities to build new skills, and are connected with their community. So Youth Roots of Hanover and surrounding area respectfully ask Bruce County to consider becoming a gold sponsor for the Impact Youth Summit in the amount of $2,000, and that amount will help to cover the cost of Sunday pizza lunch for 500 youth, plus the adult allies taking place on Saturday, May the 28th. Sorry, on Sunday, May the 29th. That's a spelling error. And so we're hoping that through community support, we'll be able to lower the registration fee. So in your package there, you'll notice that the registration fee for the summit was set at between $50 to $55 per youth. And so that fee covers all of their meals, accommodations, programs, t-shirts, swag, youth swim, etc. So the youth, all they would have to bring is their clothes. So they shouldn't have to bring a lot. And that registration fee covers all of their expenses. So we've been doing a fundraising trying to raise $58,000 in order to offset the cost for the youth. So we want to make sure this is accessible. I've tried to send our group of 10 youth to other similar events in the city, and it just gets very expensive when you're looking at registration fees of between $150 to $200 per youth, plus accommodations and meals. So we want to make sure this is affordable and that it's accessible for youth across the province. So there's the recognition that goes accordingly. Just as an update to your package, we were very thrilled to have the Saugeen Economic Development Corporation become a gold sponsor since our January update, and as of yesterday, the Walkerton Optimist Club has also become a gold sponsor. So you can stay in touch with us. We do monthly mailings with updates on the summit. You can also visit our website where you can find registration information. And we would very much appreciate if you could help us spread the word to youth that you may know of who would be interested in attending the event. We also have a Valentine's Gala that's coming up on Saturday, February the 13th as a fundraiser, and we would appreciate to see some of you there. If anyone has any questions, I'd be more than willing to answer them.
Thank you, Brandon, for your presentation. Any comments or questions from council? Ann?
I think this is a wonderful event. It's a great opportunity for youth. That Craig Kielberger, did I say his name right?
Yes.
I've watched him on TV since he was 12 years old, and so he's a great example of how youth can make a difference and get other youth to go on a positive track in life. So I think the fact that we're able to get him here to our counties in the area, and I'm sure there'll be other people coming from outside the area as well. And if I'm not much at giving motions here at the county, but I'm prepared to make another motion for the grand sum of $2,000 that we support this initiative. I think we can look at it as a big investment. It'll pay huge dividends.
I think what we will do is just refer this to corporate services, Ann, and then have that discussion.
That's fine.
Other comments or questions? Mike?
Again, thanks very much, Brendan. My interest is the Youth Roots. Has this been an ongoing organization? And if it is, how did it get started? And I think it's a great idea in the community. And my interest would be how would we, from your experience, how would we encourage this in other communities across the county?
Excellent, thank you. Well, I actually just started with Youth Roots in September, but Youth Roots has been around since 2005. Currently, we operate off of an Ontario Trillium Foundation grant, and that covers all of our operating expenses. However, Youth Roots it's really supported by community members. So we have members from Public Health, the Grey Bruce Literacy Council, and local departments that sit on our board. Youth Roots has been replicated in other communities. So it was replicated in Kincardine, and it's called Youth Waves. It was replicated in Meaford. I think it's called Youth Roots of the Blue Mountains, I believe is what it is. And so all of our youth organizations come together on a quarterly basis, and we meet usually at West for Youth Online and have a youth coalition meeting, so all the youth community partners coming together. But as far as the organization that's based in Hanover, we try to cover kind of South Bruce Grey.
Yes. My question really is, how did it get started? Was there some seed from the community that said, here, or was it just a group of youth that got together and said, we're going to do this?
Right. So it was originally came out of a town hall meeting by parents and community members that were concerned about methamphetamine use in the town of Hanover. And so that's kind of how the project started, looking at how we could implement programs for youth that would try to kind of curb methamphetamine use. Since then, we've been really working with public health and have noticed a decrease in methamphetamine use in the town, and we have since expanded. The first coordinator for Youth Roots was not hired until, I believe, 2010. So for the first 5 years of operation, it was just run as a community-based organization. And then since 2010, we have had a coordinator that's been working with the project.
Good. Any other comments? David?
I've certainly been impressed with this group that are planning the event. I think it's just, it's great. Brandon and Ashton actually attended Brockton Council last Monday evening, and we were all impressed with the leadership of even organizing such an event. Just a fantastic job in bringing all the speakers and the youth together. So you can be assured that Brockton will be on board in support. We haven't written the check yet.
That's right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Other comments? I too want to commend you and your organization. It's very important for our young people in our communities, and it's people like you that make it a better place for our youth. And it's very important, and I'm pretty sure we will find the money to help you out in your endeavors.
Excellent. We definitely appreciate that.
So thank you very much for your presentation.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, any county officer reports this morning? Pretty quiet bunch. Inquiries and announcements. Any inquiries and announcements today? Yes, did you have anything to say this morning, Mr. Kirkland?
Just, I'd like to apologize. I was sure I was told 10:30, so I thought I was a half an hour early, so.
Okay, well, duly noted. Yeah, is there any messages from Willie this morning, Jay, or?
Just that he's back asleep, so we
Okay,
won't hear
yeah.
from him for a while.
Thank you. Well, I have an announcement pertaining to our EMS Director, Doug Smith. Today is a big day for one of our own. After 35 years and 11 months, on behalf of County Council, I wish to thank Doug for his work and for developing the paramedic services. Most around the table can remember the uncertainty that we experienced in 2000 with the download of land ambulance to the county. We were fortunate to recruit Doug into this role. We had a few years of uncertainty, particularly surrounding cross-border billing, which we all know we had a little bit of fun with over the years. In addition, Doug led our Community Emergency Management Program and served as our primary CMC during this time. A highlight, no doubt, was the Huron Challenge in late 2012, which was a massive undertaking with member municipalities, Bruce Power and Emergency Management Ontario. Doug's last day will be February 26th. So Doug, congratulations on not only Bruce County Council, but the residents of Bruce County and all those that you've impacted over the years and those that are retired and everyone. So we as a group want to thank you for your dedication and your input and everything that you have done for the County of Bruce. So thank you very much. Now we have a little presentation, Doug, but the floor is yours if you would like to speak.
Wow, I don't know what to say. I'm kind of caught off guard by this. I thoroughly enjoyed my tenure here at the County of Bruce. I started working in EMS in 1973, so it's been a long haul, and after a total of 42 years in the career, I think it's time to hang it up and pass it on to the younger generation. I'd like to really thank Betty Ann for giving me the opportunity to work here in Bruce County, and I know we've had some challenges over the years, but in the end, I think everything worked out very well. I know we've come an awful long way with the ambulance service in Bruce County, and it's something I can leave and know that I can leave it, and I'm very proud of everything that occurred, all the challenges. There were some bumps along the road, but all in all, I would like to thank Bruce County Council, Warden Tulin, Kelly, Betty Ann, and all the staff for the support that I've had over the years, and I'm looking forward to retirement, and I know the county's in good hands and will continue to prosper and see EMS advance even further.
Thank you, Doug. These are actually for your wife. Okay, next up, we have reports, the Corporate Imaging and Message Cross-Functional Team Project Phase 1 Research Update. It's a bit of a tongue twister.
Through you, Mr. Warden, I'll turn it over to Cara Van Mile to introduce the speaker and to go through the report, please.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation today, Warden, members of Council. On behalf of the cross-functional team that I have with me here today, I have Rick Aiken, Stephen Wood, Janice Mawhinney, Jill Root, and Chris Irvine here with me as members of our cross-functional team. When last we presented to County Council, we talked about the imaging messaging project, which we've sort of titled the Bruce Brand. And we mentioned in that report that there were 4 phases that we were going to go through. With that report, we also acknowledged that we were going to hire Tenzing Communications, and through Gary Lintern, who is here in the audience with me today, we hired Terry Green from Insights. Terry conducted phase 1 of the research on behalf of the county with regards to the Bruce brand. I'm not going to delve into it too much because we have her in the audience today and she's going to walk us through quite thoroughly what was gained from the research phase. But on behalf of the cross-functional team, we are very excited to see the research phase come to conclusion because we learned some really valuable insights that we feel are imperative to understanding how we position the county with regards to the Bruce brand, but also that we can use as we move forward as an organization on a broader strategy. So on that note, like I said, I won't take up too much time. I am going to turn the podium over to Terry Green from Insights. She will walk County Council through the research that was done, and Gary Lintern on behalf of Tenzing Communications will conclude sort of where we see next steps and how we'll be back to Council very shortly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cara. Mr. Warden, Council, staff, and guests, I'm really delighted to be here today. This was a wonderful project, and a lot of my life is spent in solitude writing reports and looking at numbers, so it's always quite a thrill to be able to come and talk to people who actually care about what we've done and are interested in seeing the results. As Cara said, the whole topic of this is the new Bruce brand, and last October, as you well know, you engaged Tenzing to help in the development of that brand, and in turn Tenzing engaged my firm Insights to do the research. The Bruce brand project, the county is seeking a new Bruce brand, and that will aid the county in communicating its unique identity to its target audiences, and those audiences include the existing and future residents of Bruce, also visitors, existing and new business owners, and the corporation itself. In other words, this is going to be very broad-reaching, and it's going to be an overarching brand identity that the county can use to their advantage in all aspects of their operation. So the application of this brand will be as a basis of a unified voice across the organization and all of its functions. The role of research in all of this was to find out how Bruce County is currently known. Whenever you're trying to develop a brand, and Gary of Tenzing will do a much better job of sharing this with you at some later date, but you want to make very sure that what you're saying is rooted in reality. You want to be certain that people in the county, in this case, believe in what that brand stands for, and that if people come and experience the county, they will say, yes, what that brand told me really was true. It is something that I'm seeing on the ground here, and it reflects the strengths and the unique attributes of this place. So we want to make sure, in other words, that the new brand is credible and motivational, and that's the whole reason that research was undertaken in this example. As Cara said, the whole Bruce brand project has been a 4-step process, and the research as phase 1 is the subject of today's presentation. presentation and my involvement through Insights with this whole project. Phases 2 through 4 are Tenzing's job, and it's a work in process right now. They'll be developing that brand strategy and identity and a whole style guide so it can be deployed. And I know that's when it gets exciting, but it really is only going to work thanks to the input that we've received from the county and a good understanding of what the county stands for today. So our research, everything seems to come in threes in this project. It also was a three-step process. We started by saying to Kara and to the committee, it would make sense if we reviewed what has already been done. And the reason for that is we want to leverage existing learning. We don't want to spend your money rediscovering what you already know. And the majority of the existing studies and reports were around tourism, and the major use that I made of those was to have a good understanding and to be able to use the same kinds of questions in our research so we could see if it was triangulating and we were learning the same things. So that was very interesting and led us into phase 2, which was a survey of Ontario residents. So yes, Insights, we are the people who phone you at home in the evening and ask you all kinds of questions. In this case, we surveyed 505 adults living in all parts of Ontario except the very far north. Ontario was described as the key target audience in your efforts to develop tourism, attract new businesses, and attract residents. And I think if we can have a really good understanding of Ontario, the assumption is that we can leverage that, and what appeals to people here is going to have a more wide-ranging appeal. So this survey was done last year. It was from the 23rd of November till the 6th of December, and the purpose was to find out if people had ever even heard of Bruce County, and if they had, what did they think of it? Did they have a positive view, a negative view? Did they just say, I know nothing? And that is very useful as the brand deploys to know whether you're working from a position of strength or to know whether there's negative impressions out there that need to be corrected, or whether it is just a blank slate. So that was our first objective. We wanted to find out, both from the community and from through our survey, what strengths and concerns there were around Bruce County as a place to live, work, and vacation. And we had people evaluate the county through our survey and tell us what's important to me when I'm thinking of a place to live, and how do I think the Bruce would stack up as far as meeting those needs. The final phase of our research was what we call qualitative research. In reality, it was just talking to people, and it was talking to people here in Bruce, and we had 4 of these sessions, one with community leaders, one with what we called regular people, just citizens, one with council, which of course was the highlight of our entire research process, right? I'm just kidding there. And also, we had a great session with staff, and we tried through the report to see where we were hearing new information from the community that we wouldn't have received from Ontarians in general, and where the things that we were hearing seemed to come together and reinforce one another, and places where what the community of Ontario told us was, we don't know very much, but we were able to learn much more from the citizens here. So it really was a collaborative kind of exercise in gathering information. We'll leap right now into what we learned, and of course it was a very good news story. Those of you who have reviewed the report will know that, and the first thing that I said is, gee, you're working from a real position of strength. Extremely high awareness of Bruce County among people of Ontario, and this, I should say, is based on our survey. Most of the results I'm showing you are based on the survey. So people who were spontaneously aware, that was 69%. 69%. In other words, when we asked, have you heard of the following counties? And we just picked, we picked Prince Edward County because we thought they had been fairly aggressive in trying to promote a county brand. We picked Bruce and Gray because you've been doing tourism marketing in collaboration. And then because we were speaking with people in Eastern Ontario as well, we thought we'd pick a county in Eastern Ontario and just see what kind of legs it had. So you'll see that Bruce County is almost there with Prince Edward County, with 69% of people saying, yes, I've heard of that place. When we ask them directly, have you heard of Bruce County? When we're trying to find out if people know about something, we call that kind of spontaneous awareness. We said to them, have you heard of Bruce County? 69% of them said yes. We then also moved on to another question where we described Bruce County, primarily geographically, using, north of London, Ontario, where I live, and flowing it to the Bruce Peninsula and so on. And when we gave that description, another 11% said, oh yeah, now that you describe it, I do know that. Another question in our survey, which I'll show you the results of in a sec, is we asked if people were aware of specific places in Bruce County. So have you heard of Sauble Beach? Have you heard of 5 Fathoms Park? And when we'd finished with that whole list, we said, everything I just told you is in Bruce County. Now that I say that, do you think you've ever heard of Bruce County? And when we added all of that up, we got to our 85% who actually said, yeah, I think I know about Bruce County, which is an extremely high number and a real position of strength and advantage as you develop this brand. Now, I mentioned that we asked if people had ever heard of or visited selected places in Bruce County, and here we were replicating some of the tourism research that you have had done over the years, and I don't expect you to read this in any detail, but what the main thing I want you to grasp is that at the top of the list, Sauble Beach, 55% of our Ontario sample had actually visited there, and 3/4 of people were aware of Sauble Beach. And Port Elgin followed by Tobermory and the Bruce Trail, Bruce Peninsula National Park. About 7 out of 10 people had heard, if not visited, those places. So very high level of awareness of specific attractions or locations. And when we asked people if they were surprised to learn that all of that was in Bruce County, 42% said, yeah, I am surprised about that. And as we talked with Kara and with the committee about it, they said it's really unsurprising to them because a real focus of marketing here in the county has been based on individual entities marketing themselves. So through tourism marketing, there may be a called, come to the beach at Sauble, it's fantastic. Or Bruce Peninsula National Park, they're marketed through the National Park Network. So holistically, there's been very little done to market Bruce County as an entity, or I guess as we become fond of realizing through this research, the sum of all this can be greater than the parts, and that's where the brand is a pretty exciting undertaking. Another way in which you're working from a real position of strength is not only do people know about you, so, oh yeah, I know that guy. Well, the next obvious question is, and what do you think of him? Do you have a positive impression? Do you have a negative impression? Is it just neutral? And this to me was even more amazing. 81% of people who had some familiarity with the Bruce, because it only made sense to ask this of people who knew at least a little bit of something about you, had a positive impression. There was only one curmudgeon who had a negative impression for reasons which I couldn't even really understand. We asked him to explain and it was kind of incomprehensible. So other than that, and I'm tempted to say all thinking people, had either a neutral or a positive impression of Bruce County, which is pretty incredible. We also we've broken down our data 1,000 ways. The committee sees me hauling around this 4-inch thick pile of paper, which is our data tables. So we've analyzed this data every which way from Sunday, and we certainly have analyzed it by the area where the respondent lived. So I can tell you that of people who live in Bruce County, do you want to guess how many of them has a positive impression? You want it to be 100, right? It's not quite 100, but it was 91%. So even better, people who live here and know it well really do have a positive impression of the county. The lowest proportion of positive impressions was in Eastern Ontario, was 72%, and there was kind of this hit parade that we always saw, where the most positive people were people who lived in Bruce, next most were people in the near north, then Southwestern Ontario, then the GTA, and then finally Eastern Ontario, and they were the ones that knew the least about you. So if we go to this next slide, it's all about familiarity, and familiarity here was very simple. We simply asked people. We said, okay, Bruce County then, you think I've told you where it is. If you hadn't heard of it, I've now explained that to you. And we asked everybody, how familiar would you say you are with this place? And we asked them to do that on a scale of 1 to 10. So somebody thought, really, I'm not familiar at all, or we lumped the people in here who'd never even heard of it, that would give a 1. And a 10 would be, I know that place inside out, I'm very familiar. So this is just people assigning a number themselves to how familiar they feel with Bruce County. And what we see here is that there are 35%, the bottom two bars, who are completely unfamiliar, 15% who have just really said they've never heard of the place, and another 19% who've heard of it, but on that scale of 1 to 10 gave a 1. So I suspect, they know the name, but not much more. People giving a very, very high score, a 9 or a 10, was only 4%, and 11% giving a 7 or 8. So about 15% of people had high or very high familiarity. So they don't know you really well. They think they like you. It's not a bad place to start, right? But it does point out the opportunity for communications to positively inform the market and to give them a bit more depth into understanding what you have to offer. Again, people in Bruce tended to say they were more familiar, which is kind of encouraging. Their score was an average of 8.2 versus the 3.6 that we got across the board in Ontario. And as I said before, it follows that same kind of hit parade where Eastern Ontario are least familiar. Familiarity and positive impressions also increased with age, as did visitation at any point to Bruce, and I guess that's not surprising. All right. We then wanted to know what Bruce County is known for today, and we got a very good concurrence between what the survey said and what we heard in the community when we came and talked with people. And that is that the identity of Bruce really, and its most unique strength, revolved around this spectacular natural landscape that you are fortunate enough to live in. The scenic beauty, so people like to look at it, but they also really wanted to be out in it, and so the easily accessible outdoor recreational opportunities coupled with the beauty of the landscape to make this kind of the number one thing that people talked about when we asked them the strength off the top of their head. What is Bruce County most known for? What is best about it? These are the kinds of things people talk to us about. Other things were like the community feel, the peacefulness of the rural setting. So again, not that you need to be reading this in any kind of detail, but nature and the outdoors at 25% was the kind of comment when people were asked unaided, just asked the question in our survey, tell us what you think are the strengths of Bruce County. They said something that related to that, followed by 14% talking about the scenery and the diversity, and then you see hiking and biking and beaches and outdoor activities. They're all kind of at the top of the list there. We also asked if people thought they would have any concerns or that there were any concerns around Bruce County as a place to live or work or vacation. And 4 out of 10 people said there's no worry at all, nothing about it that I see as a concern. Then we heard mainly things relating to the location and concern with the economy. So lack of access to healthcare and hospitals by 12%, that it was just remote or too rural or cut off, too far from the city, 11% told us that. Lack of industry or lack of job opportunities from 10%, and things about transportation, commuting, the weather, and so on towards the bottom of the list. So kind of facts of the geographic location and facts of the climate, but also a bit of a lack of familiarity reflected here, I think. So in general, though, a good news story and a fairly compelling answer, because we do research in places where people say, you got nothing. It's known for nothing, really. And that certainly wasn't the answer here. We then did what I consider to be a really interesting kind of analysis. We honed in on asking people about what's important to them when they're choosing a place to live. Now, when this Bruce brand is employed, you're looking to attract more people to live here, also more people to start businesses here and more tourism. But we thought really when we're talking to the general public, what they know best is where they live. They know how they choose where they live. They know what's important to them in a lifestyle. And if they enjoy living here, they're going to be more apt to have a business here or want to be employed here. And tourism kind of comes in the wake as well. So we asked people how important various things would be to them, presuming they were to move to a new community. And we asked them to use a scale from 1 to 10, and we gave them a lot of factors. So the first on the list, and I don't expect you to read everything on this list, but this was important. So the most important thing to people was safety. And the question we had asked is, how important are safe neighborhoods? And 80% said, that's really important to me. It had a score of 9.2 out of 10. Everything I've put in this tier 1 had a score of greater than 8 out of 10. I was just kind of arbitrary in that. But it's all around what I would call just core needs of living. A healthy place to live, access to health care. I can afford to have a home there. I can easily get around to the places I like to go, and I can have some balance in work and life. So that's what is highly important to people. Those are kind of their core needs when they're thinking of a place to live. As we move down the hit parade, the second tier tends to relate more around what I would call community and family. So like a family-oriented place that has good educational opportunities, a community feel, lots going on, like-minded people. That tended to be second in importance. And nature fit in there as well. But the third tier is where we saw more of the details around a lifestyle. So, you know, can I go out to dinner? Can I go to the theater? I'd like to go to the beach, outdoor sports, museums, galleries. And all of those things are third tier. So you'll see they're getting scores of less than 7 out of 10. It's not that they're unimportant, it's just that other things are more important. So it might be great if I live in a community where I get to go out to dinner and have fine dining or get to go to the beach, and I love that, but it's not as important to me as the fact that I can afford to buy a home there or that I feel safe living there. So this is kind of the landscape of what is important to people. Then we asked them exactly the same questions around Bruce County, and there was a bit of a disconnect in that the areas where they thought Bruce County would excel, and those are the ones we heard really unaided as strengths also, they aren't the things that are very most important to people when they're choosing a place to live. So the things they think we do really well weren't as high on their list, and again, as I said a minute ago, it's not that they were unimportant, but we need to convince them that their core needs would be met first. So this I've called credibility, because we asked people, okay, we're running through that whole list again with you. I want you to tell me the extent to which you think this would be true of Bruce County. So a place that's close to nature. And 2/3 of people said, absolutely, I give that the highest possible score. It was 8.9 out of 10. And we're seeing on here the outdoor activities, the beaches, the scenery, and a suitable place to live if you're environmentally conscious made it onto this Tier 1 list as well. So this is what they think we're good at. This was reinforced by the fact that before we got to this question, this is what they told us on what we call an unaided basis, and it's also what we heard from people who live here. So when we talked to the community and said, what do you love about living in this place, it wasn't, I could afford to buy a house. Like, that was an aside. You know, I was able to come here because I could afford to buy a house, but what I really love about living here is that I can have a weekend every night. By the time I'm finished dinner, I can go to the beach. I don't have to wait till Saturday. I just look out my window and I see this spectacular either rural environment or dramatic coastline or whatever it may be. So as we move on, Tier 2 of what they thought we would be good at here in Bruce County, healthy was high on that list, which is good because that was one that was important to them, along with safety. But the other things that were important, the affordability, the ease of getting around, the work-life balance, and healthcare, all fell into Tier 3. In other words, we had between 40 and 45% saying, I give that a low score. I don't think that applies to Bruce County. And some of it may be true, I guess, in the depth of winter. Sometimes it is difficult to get around. But on the other hand, it also, I think, is a reflection of the lack of familiarity. So part of this would be an education process. Just to blow your mind, and one that you really are not going to be able to see, but in your leisure might want to look in the report and may understand this a little better now that I've taken you through the process, we map those two things against one another. So we got 2 scores on safety, for example. It was extremely important to people, and everything that's important is closer to the top of the picture, so safety is the highest thing on that picture. And things that they thought Bruce County was good at are towards the right of the picture. So nature is the thing that's furthest on the right. Things that are really important to people and that they think you do well are up in the top right-hand corner. And so safe and healthy are kind of tending up there. Things that were that they really thought we did well but were somewhat unimportant are down in the lower right-hand corner. So that's just a way of putting those 2 pieces of information together. All right. We then talked to people about how they thought the Bruce was as a place to visit and live and have a business. And exactly in that order, they told us that they thought it was best as a place to vacation, next best as a place to live, third best as a place to work, and fourth best as a place to have a business. I think tourism was kind of a slam dunk in this study. The tourism studies that we reviewed were very positive, and when we talked with people, they said that if they visited here, and most of them had, they loved it and wanted to come back, and it seemed to be working. As a place to live, I think we just kind of reviewed that in some detail. As a place to work, there was a perception that jobs were limited here, and as for having a business, I think people, even who were very distant from Bruce County but knew a little bit about it, thought it might be a tough place to have a business because there isn't as much in terms of a ready market and seasonality, and certainly we heard that from the community as well in our community meetings. So we focused a bit on the Bruce as a place to live, and it was seen as most suitable for people raising families and for empty nesters. That was the 2 groups where they thought they could really take advantage of getting out in the environment and enjoying it. And it was most challenging as in appealing to young adults. And I thought the presentation we just heard kind of segued nicely into this. I think that's an age group that maybe struggles a bit with living rurally, and we heard a lot of stories from the community about how, you know, I think it was a direct quote, when you're a teenager, all you want is to get out of here. And then as you start having your own family and you understand it better and you value and realize what you had, you start thinking that might not be a bad place to come back to. And of course, the community told us that they felt it was important to prioritize attracting younger residents and identified the most likely targets exactly that way, as people who had grown up here or in another rural area and were at the point of settling down and starting a family and realized, hey, it might be better to be in the kind of place that I grew up. So what does all of this mean for the Bruce brand? Well, I think the first thing is that the obvious answer is to work with the natural environment that you've been given. And that's something I think you need to leverage for sure. And although it is considered to be unique by people of Ontario, it's not really enough to accomplish what you're after. So you need to use that, but go beyond that. And people, when we talked to them in the community here, said, you know, there's a lot of distinct differences across this county, geographically, obviously, from the beach areas around Southampton to the pocket of people who work with Bruce Power, and up on the peninsula versus the rural area in the core. It's very, very different geographically, but also economically, and in terms of what there is to do there, who lives there. And this variety is a strength, especially for tourism. And secondarily, when you live here, it's great to have access to very different experiences. But they said it does add a layer of difficulty to creating a brand identity. So as I say, when developing the new Bruce brand, I think our research strongly points to leveraging the positive awareness of the natural environment and the active outdoor lifestyle, because you're recognized for that. It's no doubt true. It's true not only to those of you who live here, but people beyond here. And when we tested some brand concepts, the ones that were built on this worked the best. And when we asked the community in our brainstorming sessions to come up with what they thought some concepts might be, almost everybody built from that foundation. But then it worked better also when those ideas went further, and other kind of elements that defined the Bruce personality and could contribute to this brand with credibility, in other words, they're true, is the sense of community, simplicity, the rural or agricultural or local kind of environment, environmental friendliness, and water. And I'll just show you the results of showing people a few brand concepts. And we did this not thought these would be the concepts that they would take forward, but because I pressured them and said, this is our one shot at research, so I know you're not there yet, I know you don't have concepts, but if we could just come up with 3 quite different ideas, it is our single opportunity to get reaction from the people of Ontario to those. So the first we called Close to Nature. I called it that for the purpose of my report. We didn't call it anything in the research. It was simply we read them a description that said living in an active outdoor-oriented community with easy access, you know, to all of the natural environment. And that had high credibility, just barely the highest credibility. So there was no doubt people thought that would be true, but it was strongly appealing only to about 4 out of 10. The next concept was called Simplify Life, by me, living an active life in a place with a lower cost of living that lets you simplify your life, reduce stress on yourself and your family. And what happened there is I think we've parlayed the natural environment and the area in which you live here to something that actually relates to people's lifestyle. So what would this be like for me if I lived there? What would be the advantages? And suddenly we had a concept that people found much more appealing. So it was still highly credible, but it spoke to people much more. And then the final one was just all about rural living and a closer connection to agriculture and local. And it did well, but it resonated less strongly than the other two. It had similar credibility. So I think what we take away from this is what I said on the earlier slide, that what our research is showing is that you have great assets to build on. You don't want to ignore those in the brand, but I think you need to take it further than that when establishing the brand and make it something that people can relate to in terms of how it would affect them and their life and themselves if they were here as a visitor, as a business owner, or as a resident. I can take some questions, and then I think Gary from Tenzing also wants to tell you just briefly how they're going to move forward from all this wonderful research. Anyone have quick questions?
Just a comment, something that I was quite surprised in the county known for. Friendliness was only 8%. I was surprised that that was that low. And also, you said there was about 500 people that you talked to, that you phoned. You didn't keep track of how many of those were actually from this core of a city or were from out in the rural areas. You didn't keep statistics on that, did you?
No, we did, and I think that I would have to look that up for you. I can tell you that of our sample, 15% of them lived in Bruce County, 35% lived in the GTA, so that's obviously big city, right? And 20% lived in southwestern Ontario, which is going to be largely medium-sized city, but we would have included rural there as it occurs in our population. Near north was 10%, and that is clearly not urban. And then eastern Ontario, it did include Ottawa, Pembroke, but also the rural areas, and that was 20% of our sample. And just so that you do understand, I've had people ask me from the committee, wow, Terry, you talked to 15% of your people or 75% of people in Bruce County. We don't account for that much of Ontario's population. Did that skew all of your results? And in fact, what we do, not to bore you with all of our technical things, but we weight our data. So the results that you see, we were able to generalize what people in Bruce County said because we talked to lots of them, 75 of them. So that gives me confidence in saying Bruce County gave a score of 9.1, but in fact, after we weight the data, you only account for 1% of the weight of these total scores, because that's the percentage of the population of Ontario that Bruce County is, 1. Be way more than 1 once Tenzing's done their work and you've deployed the new brand, but at the moment is 1. Yeah.
Just how much emphasis does the county put on driving distances from different cities? We used to, the 400 corridor has got so busy heading north that Toronto really is starting to discover this area. And we always tried to point out the average driving times from, say, London, Kitchener, Toronto, those areas to this area. And people couldn't believe that they could get here as quick as they could. They were so used to heading up north and spending 3, 4, 5 hours on the road on the 400 corridor. So I didn't know how much emphasis you did on that.
It's funny because that was exactly on my mind as I designed the survey. So I asked people to score from 1 to 10 the extent to which they felt Bruce County was a reasonable distance for a weekend trip. And 3 out of 10 people gave it a very high score, and 4 out of 10 gave it kind of a medium score, and 30% gave it a low score. So the average was about 7 out of 10. Obviously, we didn't ask that to people who lived here. It would make us look kind of stupid, which we try to avoid. In the GTA and in southwestern Ontario, the average score was about 7.4 or 5. So then in near north, it was 8.3. They're closer and they're more used to driving, I would suspect. But in eastern Ontario, it was only 5.3, an average score of 5.3. So in eastern Ontario, they feel that it is further not as easy for a weekend trip, and they did constitute 20% of our sample.
I look at it on the aspect of people that are actually living here. Mm-hmm. So many people don't realize that, how close they are. I know around Christmas time they want to go to the city to shop.
Yes.
They don't know that it's only 2 hours and you're in Toronto,
yes.
or an hour you're in London. So that's just another aspect of what I'm looking at full-time residences moving here, that you really aren't that far away from everything that you want to
And certainly, we heard exactly what you're saying in all 4 of our community meetings. When we said to people, what do you enjoy about living here? They said, come here to unplug, but when you want to plug in, the city's only 2 hours away. It's not that big a deal. So we definitely heard it as a strength from people who live here. We did not hear it as an unaided strength from our survey of people in Ontario. And to the contrary, they saw ease of getting where you need to go and all of that as a bit of a weakness spontaneously. And things like shopping were in my tier 3 of what they associated with Bruce County. So I think it's safe to interpolate that it might be something you would need to educate people about, although we didn't ask it directly.
So just one more. On our health care, so many people are shocked that they can be to a hospital within 10, 15 minutes, and we probably have the figures from ambulance rides on getting to and from it, and they're quite surprised that they're able to get to health care as quick as they can. Like if you live in Toronto, you could be an hour to get to health care in the traffic. Here, we probably have the averages that we should be advertising better, and also, you know, where our communities are in comparison to the health cares in Bruce County and our average ambulance rides. And that is a big concern for somebody that's 50, 55 years old wanting to move somewhere, knowing that, oh, I can be to health care in reasonable time.
So I guess several reactions to that. One is that I think it is definitely an area for education. It was an area that people expressed concern about in our survey, and people from the community told us, no, we have great hospitals, great health care. We also did hear from the community, though, if you need very specialized treatment, you're going to be going a distance, and that can be a pain. And then we had, in our community meetings, long discussion about whether you want to attract retirees, whether that should be a target audience, and it kind of goes beyond the scope of the research, but we certainly heard from community input that they would rather have focus on attracting younger people, because you have to consider the burden on the system for the people that you're trying to bring in. So, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you, Terry, for making our job impossible, setting us up. So that's great. So we've gone through the first phase of this program. Just to be sure we're all working from the same song sheet, branding results in preference, right? So what we have to keep in mind as we go through this, it's preference we want to create. I prefer Bruce County. If I want to start a business, I will prefer Bruce County. If I want to move, I will prefer Bruce County. And that's the result of good branding. So if I think about friendliness, for example, or about it's not 2 hours to Toronto. If you can do 2 hours to Toronto, you're a much faster driver than me. And when we were talking to all our focus groups and all the folks, and even some of the folks around this table, we had the discussion about reality, right? We had a really good discussion about reality. And the things that would result in preference. So what Terry's identified, and thanks for putting that back up, that's the right slide, is that there are aspects of what we have that are very, very strong, and we need to figure out where those can take us as a group. Because what we learned, what Tenzing learned is that the research says there's high value in the word Bruce. And going into this research, we did not know that 100%. In fact, that was suspect. Okay? So now we know for sure that the sum of the parts adds value to all of you around this table, which is terrific news. So we don't have to go out and build awareness of Bruce. But if I could speculate, I could also say, I know it's a nice place to visit, but I'm not sure why I should live there, or I'm not sure why I should move there. And that's what we have to work on. Okay? And you can't run ads about Bruce County, home of great hospitals. It doesn't result in preference. There are great hospitals between you and the population bases. Or Bruce County, the home of friendly people. Most of the people we meet in Ontario are pretty good people. So it's you have to find something that this research points you to that is of more value to a greater number of people. And by the way, we don't have to be valuable to everybody, right? The research also shows us this, that we know who we have to identify, we know who we have to talk to. So these are all outstanding things to learn. So we think there's value in an asset called Bruce County. There's value for every community within Bruce County, and you can leverage that value by connecting your brands, right? We think the parts will benefit if we apply that sum properly and judiciously. In other words, we don't overwhelm local brands. So I'm looking at Annecy, Kincardine. That Kincardine has to be strong unto itself, but Bruce, if you leverage Bruce a little bit, it's going to help. That's good news. That's very good news. The research indicates some possible direction, but there are lots of places and natural habitats between here and large major populations. There are I can have a simple life in Gray. I can have a simple life in Gray, but not nearly as exciting as this, obviously. So what is that excitement? What makes simplifying life better? How do we express it in a way that doesn't demean it? Right? So there are things like that. In rural local, we know rural local does have appeal. It's how you express it and how you use it. So leveraging what we've learned, great stuff. And it establishes a point from which we can aspire to be something more. Does that make sense? So you don't start, this is the starting point. It's not an end point. The research isn't the finish. The research is the beginning. It gives you a really good foundation to do this subjective exercise called creative, which sadly is what we do. You don't want to see us when we're doing creative because we're not very social. But it's an outstanding platform upon which to build. And I haven't seen one as strong as that in terms of awareness and in terms of no negative comments. The one negative was me. I kind of slipped my negative comment curmudgeon stuff in, but Terry didn't know it. But there were no negatives, like none. I've never seen it. So, wow, you've got to be very pleased, I think, for that. Don't take it literally is another point I wanted to make. And right now it says a nice place to visit. It reinforces that we can't be all things to all people. We use it as a benchmark. And you can also use it as a benchmark. So Terry's research can be replicated 2 or 3 years from now. Replicating it a year from now is a waste of money because you won't be in market long enough with a new brand for it to make a difference. Okay? But you can start to replicate this study and know if you're moving forward in the right direction. And that's wonderful information to have for any entity, for any organization or municipality. Moving in the right direction is a good thing. It reinforces, so when someone says to you, the word Bruce doesn't matter, you can say with absolute conviction that it does. Absolute conviction. Did you notice the Prince Edward County, 70%? You guys are at 69%? Pretty good, huh? You haven't spent a dime getting to that number. Pretty interesting. So all the more important to now spend it and leverage it. Very exciting. It's a map for us, right? It takes some of the guesswork out. So when we go through creative, it takes some of the subjectivity out of it. And finally, it clearly defines that while people know the name and associate positive things with us, there is work to do. So we got to kind of figure that out and then work together toward it. So that's what we're taking from it as your branding shop, and that's what we learned. And again, it's what a wonderful place to start. It's terrific. Any questions or? It's looking like a big no. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much to both of you for those presentations, and I know there's some work ahead of us, so thank you very much. Okay, we are at committee minutes. Betty Ann?
Committee minutes have all been circulated, and I have a motion by Mr. Buckle, seconded by Mr. Ingles, that the minutes of the following committees be approved. January 7th, 2016, Corporate Services Committee, Emergency Services Committee, Homes Committee, Human Resources Committee, Museum Committee, and Social Services and Housing Committee. January 14th, 2016, Corporate Services Committee, January 21st, 2016, Highways Committee, Human Resources Division, and Planning and Development Committee.
Are there any errors, omissions, or discussions from any of those minutes that have been circulated? Hearing none, all those in favor, opposed if any, that's carried. Thank you. Are there any further motions, Betty Ann?
If we could receive a motion from the Committee for the Imaging and Messaging Cross-Functional Team, the recommendation is that County Council receive the report titled Bruce Brand Project Update Research Phase 1 Summary for information.
Do I have a mover and seconder? Milt? Ann? Are there any further discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed if any, that's carried. Thank you. Unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business? Hearing none, bylaws, Betty Ann.
Moved by Mr. Buckle, seconded by Mr. Ingles, that the minutes of the following committees be approved. January 7th, move my page. Moved by Mr. McKeever, seconded by Mr. Eagleson, that the following bylaws be approved. 2016-6, about to appoint a Director of Corporate Services for the Corporation of the County of Bruce. 2016-7, about to authorize the execution of an agreement between West Aerial Power Incorporated and the Corporation of the County of Bruce for the provision of the Ontario Electricity Support Program and Low-Income Energy Assistance Program Assistance Service Agreement. 2016-8, about to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the County of Bruce at its meeting held the 4th day of February 2016.
Are there any further discussions on either of those bylaws? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you.
Moved by Mr. Eagleson, seconded by Mr. McKeever, that we do now adjourn to meet again. I am going to change this because I believe we're going to have a special council meeting
That is
next week
correct.
to deal with the notice of motion, to meet Thursday, February 11th, 2016 at 9:30 a.m.
All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you.
We stand on